there. I am the Explicit Empress. I am an emotional and spiritual health advisor, haver of opinions, conduit of the divine, and part-time witch. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok and also on my website. We are here with another episode of Healing Our Shadows with the Black Moon Lilith placement in our chart. So we have looked at Lilith moving to Virgo, which is an older video, and we looked at part 1, how we could work with Lilith. This is part 2 now, Lilith moving in November. So there is a little bit of a catch up to do because Lilith has been working with this Scorpio moon cycle and this Scorpio Taurus eclipse season that we just closed up. So I'm just going to do a little recap and then we'll get into the movement of Lilith for November. So we have the new moon coming up, the new moon in Scorpio. So this is a superpowered Scorpio new moon. It is making a conjunction with the sun in Scorpio. So this is culminating the last 3 years and it is ending that eclipse energy. And it is the creation of a new force, a new energy, and a new dynamic. So this is the sun shining light on the moon, and both are in Scorpio. So this is the sun, representative of our ego self, shining a light onto the moon, which represents our non-negotiable emotional needs and reactions. So this is going to help us throw out anything that no longer serves us. Scorpio is the death and rebirth cycle. It is transformations. And so the last Scorpio new moon that we had that was not an eclipse was November 4th, 2021. So that one worked with Mars. So that new moon was closely conjuncting Mars in Scorpio and it was squaring Saturn in Aquarius. So both of these were about taking action in revolutionary ways and from a perspective of being deep, passionate goals, you know, our deep shadow side, Scorpio, our secrets, our addictions, our fears, okay? So this was where we saw what we were about to transform, okay? And this eclipse cycle started on October 24, 2022. All right, so we are closing out cycles officially on paper with this moon that's coming up. So let's have a look at how Lilith was around. So in 2021, the wounds that we were healing that were related to Lilith were Lilith in Gemini, okay? So these were wounds around rejection and speaking our mind. So these things can manifest in us in manipulation with words to try and get our way. It also relates to how we tell ourselves lies to avoid self-introspection. But it's also how we understand that words are important and we need to be intentional with words, okay? So in 2021, this started our journey through Lilith in Gemini, then Lilith in Cancer. So Lilith in Cancer was requiring us to heal a wound of rejecting feminine energy, of being under-nurtured as a child and lacking security, or even just feeling like a stranger to your own family. So healing ancestral karma as well from the mother line, so that feminine energy, and also Lilith in Leo, which was requiring us to heal a wound of self-confidence and our sense of self, also our masculine energy, so craving attention as well as part of that ego self, and where we were afraid of attention as well as craving attention, and also about how we let our ego run us. So when our ego runs us, we are looking at arrogant behavior and selfish behavior. So this was all related, that Lilith and Leo healing around, you know, potentially where we would have had to earn love from a masculine caregiver as well, okay? So Gemini, speaking our mind, speaking up for who we are and making sure that we aren't using words for manipulation and that we're being intentional. Lilith in Cancer, the feminine energy wound, so relating to mother, relating to being able to find our self-confidence and validation inside of ourselves, not from a mother, external energy, and also that Lilith in Leo, which was about the masculine energy, okay? So these were the wounds that we were transforming with this Scorpio Taurus axis. Okay, so during this eclipse axis on the Scorpio Taurus axis, this is where Lilith was present. This is what she was asking us to heal. So we have all been trying to balance out these feminine and masculine energies, as well as understanding within that balance, our sense of self and our self-worth needs to come from within. And that from doing that, we can then balance also our ego and our self-confidence. And then because of that, we can speak up for ourselves. So now we are dealing with Lilith in Virgo. So she is trying to heal those wounds where we try to live up to other people's expectations over our own. So these would have been places that we were shamed as children for not fitting in with our environment. It's also shame around sexuality. There could also be traumatic sexual experiences that with creative programming around, and how these wounds and the repressed nature of the emotions attached to them, because Lilith represents the dark side of our emotions, so the things that we often repress, how the repressed energy is then projected onto others with judgment, with criticism, with being joining up forces with other people to oppress others so that we feel better about ourselves, with allowing ourselves to be oppressed, allowing ourselves to be chosen second, putting ourselves behind somebody else's needs. And this creates that inability to be vulnerable with others, okay? So this is what Lilith in Virgo is asking. You know, she's coming in to say, how are you going to fight back? Okay? How are you going to be a creative force here? So how, you know, if you are somebody who is on social media, you might be feeling, you know, overworked and underpaid, okay? You might be fighting for gender representation, reproductive rights, sexual expression, all right? So these things currently being seen as a threat, and you can kind of see that in the world, in the collective as well. These aren't just things that are happening on an individual level, these are happening collectively, okay? So this is that idea of normal society and how we make choices to fit into normal society, even though that goes against the voices and the feelings and the energy of our true self, of those dark, repressed emotional sides of us that we don't listen to because we're trying to keep the peace, okay? So, you know, Lilith in Virgo is asking questions like, how and where have you been sold into bondage or sold for a fraction of your worth? How can we look at how we might have compromised our authentic divine gifts to be suitable for public consumption? Okay, now Saturn is in Pisces, okay, so this inspires conversations about boundaries, and it's going to help us look at this like diluted wisdom of society right now, and through that eye of this current moment and how it's holding on to past mentalities. So Saturn has just started moving direct as well, so we have that energy behind us with working with Lilith in Virgo here. So Saturn moving direct really puts the emphasis on dishing out the karma, good and bad. So if you have been working on yourself, then, and you have been putting in a lot of hard work here, then you will start to see Saturn here making it easier to push forward with your shadow work and self-introspection, and to be able to see where new values can be made. If you've not, you're probably going to face a few bad karma situations in order to put you right on path, okay? So Pluto has also started moving direct in the last month. And so Pluto moving direct, as he was in his retrograde phase, he was kind of saying to us, okay, I'm going to pump the brakes on my intervention into your life. So Pluto being transformations. And he allowed us to look at our lives through our own filters and find ways that we wanted to transform. So now with him going direct, he's kind of stepped back in charge, and he's saying, okay, well, if you were doing the work, I'm here to walk with you. And if you were not doing the work, I'm going to push you as hard as I can, okay? Again, bringing in these eclipse moments that we would have started seeing over the last month that was closing out this cycle. So we're going to be facing self-betrayal. We're going to be facing where we chose to participate in betraying others and oppressing others. And also we're going to be asked to take responsibility for it. Okay, Lilith is not a light placement to work with. She is dark. She is feisty and she will speak her mind when she comes to help us, all right? And so she is asking us to look at ourselves with responsibility, with emotional responsibility, with spiritual intelligence, and to look and stand in the present at how our actions of the past have influenced our present and how our actions in the present could influence the future should we not throw out these outdated ideas and cycles that we are in, okay? So we're looking at where we have participated in harm, and that is not very easy to do for a lot of people because our ego is going to step up and try and put a stop to that because, of course, our ego does not want us to feel bad, all right? So Virgo wants us to do things like Virgo is the earth sign, okay? So it wants us to ground through things. So it wants us to feel these large emotions that we often repress, particularly in times when we haven't chosen ourselves, when we've felt forced into situations, rage, okay? And Virgo wants you to feel it in your body. So Virgo in Lilith, when we are feeling this rage in our body, we need to find physical ways to ground it. Dancing, let it explode, let it sweat out of you, okay? Do something that grounds your body into the earth, all right, in order to get it out. Now, when we do embrace this Lilith in Virgo and we have learned to work with these shames and guilts and misunderstandings in relation to this repression and oppression, we are able to then claim responsibility for the part that we played in the past, okay, for being able to then confront others as well as ourselves and to sort of step up and understand that, you know, the judgment and criticisms that we have for ourselves are unnecessary in healing. We need to understand them, we need to work with them, but overall we need to forgive ourselves for not knowing what we didn't know and move through, okay? And once we do that, particularly Lilith in Virgo is kind of asking us to be done with acting perfect in the eyes of everybody else. It's asking us to be able to be real and free and stand in our power. So again, as we look through the transitions that we've had, Lilith in Gemini wanting us to speak up for who we are. Then we had Cancer and Leo asking us to balance out the masculine and feminine energy. So the masculine energy of taking action, having self-responsibility, having initiative, and the feminine energy of our emotional nature, of how we might repress our feelings and then do, you know, project our emotions onto other people and be passive aggressive. And, you know, that's also our intuitive nature. So balancing those two things out. And now that we've worked through those things, we are standing in this place of now from that position of being more balanced with our feminine and masculine energies to be able to now stand here and really take stock of where we have taken part in things that we really shouldn't have, that went against our true natures, okay? So starting at the 3rd of November, so we're a few days in, we had a few movements around. So let's just run through those to see what would have come up. All right, so on the 3rd, we had quite a lot of movement here, all right? We had the moon making a sextile aspect to Lilith. We had the moon making a semi-square with Lilith, all right? So I think in late October, we had a couple of quintiles as well. So that first part of the month up until the 4th, we would have been having these things show up. So we had Mercury was in Scorpio as well. So deep communication and understanding, okay? So looking at our use of criticism, and that's of ourselves and of others, and looking into that shadow, okay? And how we give and receive information in order to choose ourselves or others. And then we were asked to sort of let go of that, all right? With the moon in Gemini, we were sort of curiously looking at those things and seeing how we were going to let that go and move forward and understand these emotions from that curious Gemini polarity. Then once the moon had moved into Cancer, we saw her come in there after that kind of understanding of how we give and receive that information. And she was coming in with a little cozy hug so that we could sort of go into that dark emotional space a little bit easier. Then with that semi-square to Lilith, which was late at night on the 3rd of November, that would have brought up some very frustrated emotions, and it kind of was forcing us into a position of choosing someone over ourselves. So there would have been a situation happen around those times like at the end of the day on the 3rd, where you were potentially pushed into a situation that you didn't want to be in. And that would have brought up some feelings here about why you were doing that. And that were you choosing somebody else's comfort over your own? And it would have been sort of looking at that situation for like, is this time to get rid of this situation altogether, or are there things I can transform? Okay. So then November 4th, we saw Mars make a quintile aspect with Lilith. So this would have been Mars wanting to start seeing some action. Okay, Mars in Scorpio as well. So wanting to see some intense, deep action. So a lot of inner work was being required of us. And this would have been about uncovering our self-judgmental natures. So looking over that experience where we were forced to choose somebody over ourselves, perhaps, or somebody else's comfort over our own comfort and our own voice. And this would have been, for a lot of people who haven't done any of this work before, it could have been very annoying, very frustrating, and very difficult to make sense of what was happening. So your ego would have been loudly screaming at you that it wasn't your fault and don't worry about it. But that's the part that we need to sort of break through when we're working with Lilith, all right? So then we see on the 5th of November, the moon making a semi-sextile. So the moon was in Leo, and this is looking at the ego part, okay? So Leo being our egoic creativity ruled by the sun. So wanting to really have a look at how our ego self is in its critical nature sometimes. So how that's really looking at your part that you played in the oppression of others, or in allowing yourself to be oppressed. Again, another difficult thing to see through if you haven't done this work before. All right, November 7th. The moon made a conjunction aspect here. So the moon in Virgo now, Lilith in Virgo. So this energy was like a really nice, happy wrap up of those first 7 days of November. So this is that energy coming through with Virgo working with Virgo to heal. So Virgo, it's a healing energy, it's a discerning energy, it is judgmental and critical, but here in a conjunction working together, it would have helped you understand how to give service to yourself, how to put yourself first, and would have maybe helped in your idea of what your self-care needs to be in around to allowing self-confidence and understanding self-confidence is different to ego presentations, okay? So Virgo also being the sort of 6th house. So that's like your health, mental health, spiritual health, physical health, and emotional health. So it would have been asking you, Virgo moon, asking that Virgo Lilith to just do a little bit of a health check on your dark side, okay? And we should be using this energy when it's a Virgo moon and a Virgo Lilith, when they are working together, we are using this energy to create things like daily habits towards maintaining the thought process we would like to have as we heal these wounds, okay? So that's things like looking in the mirror and doing affirmations, telling yourself that you love yourself, you know, moving your body in healthy ways, dancing, stretching, running, whatever it is that connects you to your physical body in order to allow it to feel your self-love, okay? That is what we want to be doing when Virgo moon is working with Virgo Lilith, all right? Then we had November 9th at 4:23 a.m. So remembering a lot of this Lilith work does take place in our dream space, okay? Because Lilith being the dark side of our emotional nature. So 4:23 a.m. on November the 9th, we had the sun quintile Lilith. So the sun in Scorpio, we are in Scorpio season. So really coming in to shine a light here on the dark side of that emotional state and to really try and help us rearrange and organize our own needs now to be aligned with these transformations that we've had. So we've also had Chiron around. So Chiron representative of the material things from the ages of 3 to 23 that were emotional woundings that we created reactions around. So Chiron is around a bit as well in November. So these two things are very closely linked. If you want more and deep information into your own Chiron and Lilith placements, which does help with this work, I do birth chart analysis and I'd be very happy to help you out. So jump on my website and have a look, or send me an email and we can chat about it and we can get you booked in, okay? So yeah, while we are making these transformations around this Chiron wound, we are being asked here with this quintile aspect for that sun in Scorpio to sort of shine a light here in order to reorganize that Lilith dark side of our emotional needs to then transform some of these Chiron wounds, all right? So they do work very closely together. Then on that same day at 5:54 p.m., Pluto comes in. So Pluto is in Capricorn. He is in the last kind of part of his Capricorn here because we are seeing him move in January to Aquarius. And remembering that hasn't happened for 248 years. So it is very transformational energy, okay? So Capricorn comes in here with the cold, hard discipline, all right? And wants to show us how our relationship with self-critical behavior can hold us back. So it wants to show us where we need to let go of fears, where we need to let go of addictions, and how we need the discipline to do that, okay? So Pluto in Capricorn coming in to help us stand up for ourselves, stand up for that true nature, that dark side of our emotional side, honestly and with discipline, stand up and see what we need to change, what we need to let go, all right? So November 10, that is the day I'm recording this. So at 9:03 a.m. this morning, we saw the moon make a semi-square to Lilith. So the moon is now in Libra, Lilith in Virgo. So Libra moon coming in here, asking for harmony and balance. And Lilith in Virgo being very overly critical of itself, okay? Very judgmental on the give and take in relationships as well. So you might have found that this morning it was very noticeable to you if you were in an unbalanced relationship with anyone. And I'm not just talking about romantic relationships. This is work relationships, friend relationships, relationships with your children. So these are human relationships, okay? And this disharmony would have showed up with that moon in Libra coming in to check out who isn't balancing out with you. Now, you could have been on the other end of that as well, remember. So you could have been that you might be the one not giving enough to a relationship, and you might have had to face up to that this morning. All right, so on November 12th, we see the moon making a sextile. So moon in Scorpio making a sextile aspect to Lilith in Virgo at 2:02 p.m. on the 12th here. So this is Lilith coming in and showing us how balancing that relationship, that issue that has just come up a couple of days ago, how balancing that relationship dynamic helped us to see where we are projecting our own judgment onto others. So remembering that a lot of our Lilith stuff will come up in projection because it is the repressed dark desires that we try to push down, okay? So with this sextile with the moon in Scorpio, we would have started to be able to understand how that projection of our judgment unbalanced the relationship in some way. So whether that was you had expectations that you hadn't have talked about, you didn't bring up your own needs and desires, or vice versa, this is when this will start becoming clear, okay? So at 9:53 p.m., so at nighttime on the 12th here, we see a really nice energy. So closing out this beautiful understanding, okay? So Venus newly in Libra making a sextile with Lilith in Virgo. So bringing the love energy and really making us see that the places we have felt shame or guilt around our behaviors, that the places where we were oppressed or did the oppressing or felt oppressed, that they are just tools we can use for power. And really showing us how we need to be true to ourselves when we show up in relationships in order to let other people love who we truly are. So we would have had this issue come up that made us see how unbalanced it was. Then we would have noticed in a really uncomfortable way for a lot of us how part of that was our fault. How that unbalanced part of the relationship that we weren't enjoying, that give and take, was potentially in our back pocket because we either didn't speak up for ourselves because we were trying to maintain comfort for somebody else, or that person we didn't either speak up when they were being unbalanced, or we didn't speak up with our own needs. We just repressed it and then sat and felt unbalanced. Okay, and so this energy comes in really nicely on the night of the 12th, right before we get that new moon transformation. So absolutely stunning, about how we needed to speak up for ourselves and how that is power, and how then others people can love us where we're at, who we truly are, and we don't need to repress any of our needs, and we don't need to feel like someone isn't giving us what we need. And because if we do that, if we assume that somebody knows what we need and we don't speak up for it, and then we get into a bitter place of thinking, I'm not having my needs met, whose fault is that? Okay, and that is what Black Moon Lilith wants us to look at. She's not shy about it. She's going to make you see where it was your fault in order to best make it a power. Okay, we need to remember that when we're working with these darker placements, with these places where we need to confront ourselves. The idea of confronting yourself, particularly here dealing with Virgo, very judgmental. We aren't trying to judge ourselves harshly. We aren't trying to criticize ourselves into a shameful hole. We are trying to objectively and with responsibility see our part in how that needs to change, in why that hasn't changed yet, and why we are still being affected by this cycle of behavior. Okay. So then we are looking at November the 13th, okay? So this is the day of the new moon, all right? So this energy is intense, all right? So if you are taking notes, write intense in capital letters and underline it, all right? So at 12:41 on the 13th, the moon is making a quintile, moon in Scorpio, a quintile with Lilith, all right? So this is where we try to understand the strength of understanding the fears, of understanding the addictions. And so this is what I was talking about, in order to understand these things, we cannot just be harshly self-critical. All right. So we need to understand the fears and addictions that we have that lead us to being critical, that lead us to being oppressive towards others. And we need to look at how those things allow us to continue this behavior, whether that is allowing someone to oppress us or allowing ourselves to be so self-critical. We have to understand the fears and addictions, which is Scorpio energy, moon in Scorpio trying to show us that, okay? So at 5:59 p.m., so the moon is, I think, 7:30 on the 13th. So this is intense energy, okay? Mercury has just moved to Sagittarius, so it is going to now make a square aspect with Lilith in Virgo, all right? Now this will be direct and fire-driven communication. And so this could be with yourself, this could be having a sharp tongue and a judgmental tongue with yourself, or this could be a situation that happens in the material world in a relationship where someone is coming at you, or you are the giver of some very direct and fire-driven communication. And this will be coming up against our understanding of needing to put ourselves first, all right? Or it's going to be coming up of how we treated others badly and unfairly because of our own self-critical nature, all right? And coming up this close to a new moon, it is asking you to look at it and throw it out. Okay, and this will be intense energy, all right? This Scorpio moon, go and watch my Scorpio moon video if you have not. This is intense transformational energy, and we can tap into it to change who we are as people, okay? Very intense energy. So November 14th, the other side of the moon, all right? So the moon has now moved into Sagittarius, and at 9:49 p.m. it will square Lilith. Now, square aspects are war aspects, okay? They're very uncomfortable, and the energy is fighting each other, all right? So, of course, we see Lilith coming in here. She's going to have a problem. She's going to have a problem with how we have had to look at our self-critical nature in relation to what came up just before that moon, all right? And if we have been giving too much to others, we're going to have a problem with that here, with this square war aspect. And if someone thinks that we have been giving too little, they're going to have a problem with us there. And we are going to be asked to face this, to face how we criticize and judge, and how those two things allow this repression of self or this oppression of others, right? So Sagittarius moon is going to come in and it is going to light a fire under these issues. And because we are dealing with Mercury and Sagittarius as well, this could very well be a conversation you have with someone. And it's asking us to see another way, okay? To not let this criticism and judgment and war energy stop forward movement, all right? So it's an uncomfortable energy, all right? November 17th, during our sleep down here in Melbourne, 3:16 a.m., the moon in Capricorn will make a trine aspect with Lilith in Virgo. Now, this is discipline moon, hard work moon, all right? And it's coming in on this Lilith in Virgo, on these woundings, and it's trying to help us combine this earth nature, this discerning, grounding nature, so that we can really stand in some self-discipline here. So this is how you turn that wound into power, is you understand it, you understand your part, you understand where it came from, and then you create your daily habits, Virgo, around changing those things. And now Capricorn, he's going to come put some discipline down, okay? Big daddy discipline. So then we see the next day, November 18th, again, 5:23 a.m., most of us still being asleep. This is going to be an anxiety trigger aspect. The moon in Capricorn making an anxiety trigger aspect with Lilith in Virgo. So we could be waking up on the 18th, highly anxious, okay? Be aware of that if you're someone who suffers from anxiety disorders, okay? Be aware of that. So write yourself a note. I'm telling you, take notes on the anxiety days. Watch my astro weather as well and take notes, okay? It's very helpful to know when you wake up if the anxiety is your own because of your situation, your mental health situation, or if it's related to the energy, okay? So this will be the Capricorn moon coming in, and it's going to come in unfeeling and harsh, all right? Because that's Capricorn moon is often like that, and it's going to try and push us past any obstacles that have come up while we were trying to ground into some discipline, right? So we're going to find this might be the morning we wake up and don't want to do that self-affirmation. This is the morning that we might wake up and not want to have that conversation with someone where we would have to be putting ourselves first. Okay, and Capricorn moon is going to come in with his big daddy discipline, and he is going to say, no, you set this rule, push past this obstacle, push past this. Okay, this is your wound showing up, and it wants to project. All right, it's going to want to project this uncomfortable feeling you have about staying in these rules, staying in these boundaries. All right, and Mr. Capricorn moon wants to come in and help us out here. So let's let him. And that's what gives people anxiety here in these situations with these triggers, all right? Because when we are looking at ourselves, particularly people who struggle putting themselves first, and the anxiety that builds around that when we have this Capricorn discipline come in is quite heavy, all right? But you need to remember there should be nothing anxious about you standing in your truth, okay? So then at 8:56 p.m., November 18th, the moon in Capricorn will make a biquintile with Lilith, all right? So this is just a little bit more discipline energy, but it's not as anxiety triggering, okay? This is more looking at that judgmental nature that we looked at earlier where we maybe didn't want to stand up for ourselves, and it's going to show us what we need to let go of. So remembering these anxiety triggers, these like really uncomfortable emotional reactions that we have are doorways to a path of gold. And that gold is seeing what we need to let go, seeing what we need to shine a light on, seeing what we need to heal from. And that's what this aspect is going to do with a little bit of discipline behind it. It's going to help us be able to rearrange thought patterns, to rearrange cycles and ways that we have seen things in order to keep to that discipline, keep to those rules we've set, okay? Then let's go November 19. All right. So a lot of action here, a lot of action. We're going to see this Scorpio new moon come in. It's going to bring the transformation, and then Lilith is going to hit us with some pretty hectic discipline on fixing this, okay? So 7:16 a.m. on November 19th, the moon is going to make a quincunx with Lilith. Now the moon will be in Aquarius then. So this is going to ask us for a compromise in relation to the collective. So the Aquarius is more about, so it's an independent and eccentric energy, but it is aware of the collective and it does want what's best for the collective. Okay, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is change, but it is also collective mentality and revolution in the collective. All right, so this is going to be a compromise on how our judgmental and oppressive natures affect others, affect the collective, affect our partner, our children, people who are around us, our business people. And this is going to give us a really nice energy of how we can rebel against these natures, how we can stand in our weird, quirky self and really have a lot more confidence to change things. Uranus, changing things, ruler of Aquarius, how we can change things that will not only be good for us, but will then be the downflow effect of being good for the collective around us, okay? November 21, at 10:38 a.m., we have got a not so great aspect, all right? We've got the moon in Pisces making an opposition with Lilith in Virgo. So Pisces and Virgo are on the same axis. They often struggle to understand each other. Pisces being the deep, dark, emotional ocean feelings, and Virgo being that very strict, bring some rules feelings, all right? So that Pisces moon is going to be fighting Lilith in Virgo because that moon in Pisces is going to want us to escape. Okay, we are November 21, we have been through a lot of transformational energy, and that Pisces who feels deeply is going to want to shut down the feelings and escape. Okay, so Lilith here, she wants to plan, she wants to judge, discern, fix, right? Moon in Pisces is like, no, I want to escape. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And Pisces moon gives us a very passive energy, makes us not want to fight, makes us want to go out, run into the forest is my main escape thought that comes into my head when there's a moon in Pisces, okay? So, but we can use this, all right? Because Pisces energy is I believe energy. So we can use the nature of this I believe Pisces energy with the nature I analyze, the Virgo energy, and we can use that to look at the places where we have let ourselves down, but through the filter of where we have used emotional natures to manipulate, okay? And that's to manipulate ourselves, like attaching to an emotion to manipulate ourselves into feeling like we have been oppressed. That can also be manipulating others with our emotions, okay? Pisces energy sometimes falls into emotional manipulation. So looking at how we have emotionally manipulated others to get out of having to stand in responsibility. This is very uncomfortable energy, okay? I'd be journaling about it. I will be journaling about it. And you know, really looking at that, like how have I used emotional manipulation on myself in order to avoid deep self introspection and healing, and how have I used emotional manipulation on others to avoid taking responsibility for oppressing them, for judging them, for being too critical, okay? And it's going to also be asking us if we have attached our needs to emotional trauma, okay? So to our own emotional trauma, have we attached what we think our needs are to an emotional trauma that happened years ago? Have we attached our needs to an emotional trauma of somebody else? Okay, Pisces as well has all of the feelings, but often can attach its emotional state to others. Feels like other people's emotional traumas belong to them and attaches to it, okay? And again, this is a method that energy uses to avoid self-responsibility, all right? Very uncomfortable to look at these things about yourself. And so how we are using this emotional manipulation, this attachment to emotional traumas that no longer are serving us, or this attachment to other people's emotional traumas, how we use that as an excuse or an escape from facing the reality of our situation, facing ourself in this situation, and how we didn't take responsibility for our emotions, for our mental state, for what came out of our mouth when we projected these things, looking at that. Not to put yourself down, but to understand it, okay? If we can understand where we let ourselves down, by escaping reality instead of seeing it, we can work on it. If we just go, you are a terrible person, we can't work on that. All right. So we need to go, okay, this is what I did. Why did I do that? Where did I do that? How did that affect me? How did that affect others? And that is what this opposition is coming in. And your ego will fight you on it. Definitely 100%. Ego does not want to take responsibility when it makes us feel uncomfortable. All right. So know that going into this work. All right. November 23 at 1:54 p.m. we see the moon in Aries, fire moon, making a quincunx with Lilith. Now this fire moon coming in with some I am energy, all right, and wants us to take stock of who we are, okay? Wants us from a point of reality, okay, and a point of showing us how if we do not show up for ourselves, that we will face the consequences, okay? And so that consequence being the projection onto other people that we then feel guilt about, or the repression of our own needs, which we then will develop, shame feelings around, like, why didn't I stand up for myself? Okay, so the consequences of not standing up for yourself. And so this fire moon is coming in here and wants you to have a look at it, wants you to find a compromise here with needing to give service, Virgo, needing to think of other people's feelings, but also needing to look at yourself as well, giving service to yourself. So when in these situations, and this is during the day, 1:54 p.m., this could be somebody coming in with a situation that needs you to compromise from a point of still standing up for yourself. So finding a way to start practicing these Lilith wounds, these Lilith guilts, these Lilith shames that we have, to start practicing a way to heal from them. Virgo daily habits, start practicing them, okay? November 24, 12:11 a.m. while we're sleeping down here in Melbourne. There's a biquintal aspect, okay? The moon's still in Aries, Lilith in Virgo. So this is a helpful aspect to the one we saw on the 23rd. So this is now coming in with like, well, you looked at it yesterday. You can see what happens. You can see what the consequences are. What do you need to let go of? What do you need to let go of? And how, from an I am perspective, can you understand that letting go of this is beneficial to you? Okay, so when we're in Aries, we are looking from us. I am. So how letting these things go is going to be beneficial for you. That is what this aspect is asking you to do. So of course, later on in the afternoon at 3:39 p.m., we're going to have a little anxiety trigger coming up, because we are going to now be looking at changing old programs. We've been thinking about what we needed to let go of, and now we are going to be asked to do it. And that's going to be anxiety triggering, because when we change these deep parts of ourselves, it's very unnerving. We get used to the way that we behave in certain situations, and when we try and change that, we have to actively think about it. And for a lot of people, the amount of self-responsibility that takes is an anxiety trigger, okay? So this, again, being during the day down here for us, this could be someone showing up to ask you to do something, all right? And that something is going to push up against your own wants and needs. And you're being supported now to push past that. So someone's going to come in with something, and it's going to bring up this anxiety, because you are just in the process of seeing what you needed to throw out. And it's going to be something that wants to trigger you into the behavior that you just decided you were throwing out. And it's going to feel very unnerving to act against that programming, all right? And so you're being supported, though, by this aspect, by that moon in Aries wanting you to stand in I am. You're going to be supported to act without compulsion and obsession, all right? So to not get obsessive about what you're doing, to not just act out without thinking about it, because you will have to think about it, because changing behaviors that we are so used to is an active process. We have to actively think about it until we get used to it, all right? So a few busy days here towards the end of November, because November 25, all right, at 5:35 p.m., The moon will be in Taurus, and it is going to be making a trine, so a lovely aspect here with Lilith. So this is going to bring us some comfort. So hopefully you've been able to work through that you were able to not fall back into old cycles. And with that, we see Taurus bringing in a bit of sensual energy, all right? And with Lilith around, this could be some spicy times that make you feel good, all right? Because we are dealing with Venus also in Libra. So it's a very nice, sensual energy when we see the moon in Taurus, especially here with Venus in Libra. So this is some self-love energy, all right? November 25, 5:35 p.m. So do some self-love, all right? Look at how you need security now. Really look at the work that you've been going through. If you've been too hard on yourself, I want you to write yourself a love letter. You know, I want you to write out all of the ways that you looked at yourself and, you know, even write the mean things and then write what you would say if that was your best friend. Right? So like write down all of the mean things you've thought about yourself and then look at those things as if your best friend is telling them to you and write some rebuttals, okay? Do some self-love exercises like that. Look at where you need security, look at where you need comfort, all right? And looking at being able to find comfort in being yourself, in being your true self, without these filters, okay? Without, if you're not repressing anything, you're not projecting anything, and that true version of yourself, what security do they need? All right. And this being able to find comfort in being your true self, being comfortable there, really stops a lot of projection of wounds relating to judgment and criticism. All right. Because if we aren't judging and criticizing ourselves, we don't feel as comfortable to do that with others because there's less to be critical of when we understand that everybody is having a time. Okay. So November 27th up next, 2:26 p.m. Venus making a semi-square with Lilith. So Venus in Libra, quite a nice aspect, but here we go. We might see a relationship situation coming up. All right. And this relationship situation is going to ask for some give and take. All right. It's going to bring up some concerns of if you are allowing someone to put themselves over your own needs or vice versa. So this is going to be a question that needs to be answered. Like, are we putting someone else before my own needs? Or are we feeling forced to do that, to put somebody else first? And is it worth evolving this situation or dissolving it? All right, there's going to be a lot of questions brought up with this semi-square, and it's going to be in a relationship dynamic. At 10:32 p.m. that night, we see another square. So this is a bit of a battle day here with Lilith. And this is going to be, so moon will be in Gemini. So we're going to be a bit more curious here with this battle. And we're going to be looking at it, how we put other people first and how we judge them, okay? Curiously looking at it with this moon in Gemini. Could be a conversation as well. Gemini loves to be chatty. So this, it's likely to be a heated conversation with that Gemini around, all right? And Gemini, be careful, could get very manipulative with words, all right? So either you might get a bit manipulative with words in order to get your point across, or they might. So be very clear here. Try not to be too judgmental and critical with yourself or with others, but try to get clarity. Do not try and read between the lines under this square, okay? So November 29, the sun is coming in to have a battle here. So the sun will be in Sagittarius. We will be in fiery, fire-tongued, don't care about your opinion, going to have the adventure anyway, Sagittarius season, all right? So it's coming in to make a square here with Lilith, shining its adventurous, fiery light, okay? This is some direct fire being shone straight onto that Lilith wound, all right? Because it wants us to take action. It wants us to use higher wisdom now, and it wants us to see the truth and the reality of where we need to assimilate the information in the environment in order to know when and where to give and take. All right, it's going to be very harsh on that. Sagittarius knows what it wants. So after these situations that have shown up in relationships, we're going to feel very strongly here about what the give and take has to look and feel like. And it's going to be asking us with the square to look at the environment, look at the relationship situation, and from that information that we see, that we've gotten through that Gemini moon aspect, it's going to want us to know when and where to do the give and take, really helping us discern that, all right? So A little bit later in the morning on the 29th, 7:21 a.m., finally we get a bit of a nicer aspect. Moon in Gemini making a quintile with Lilith. So this is going to be some communication. This is going to be being able to get some clarity through communication, and because it's going to give us the desire to make sense, the desire to analyze and order these thoughts that have come up in that earlier conversation where it may have just been a fight, all right? So then we're ending November 30, thankfully with a beautiful aspect with the moon in Cancer making a lovely sextile to Lilith, all right? So we've come through this fire. We have had some great communications with self and others about how we need to show up for ourselves, how we need to make a balance of give and take, how we need to understand these natures that we repress so that we do not project. So here we go. We're going to bring some nurturing energy in on it. Cancer moon loves a bit of a nurture, all right? So this is that mother energy, that self-mothering love coming in with that unconditional love, unconditional understanding that you expect from mothering yourself, all right? So this is that place where, you know, we have opened up, we have seen or we have used some manipulative communication. We have looked into that. We have spoken our minds, whether that be in a fight energy or not. We then get clarity on all of that. And now here at the end of the month in this nice, passive, nurturing Cancer aspect, we are able to take stock of how this has now given us a little bit more security, a little bit more comfort, a little bit more understanding. So either we may have ended relationships, we may have changed relationship dynamics because we've had such a transformative month. And so this energy, really lean into it in order to self-love and self-nurture and really mother yourself beautifully, okay? Be around people that make you feel good about this version of yourself. Be around people who are also practicing healing these Lilith wounds, okay? So a really, really transformational month. November, and Sagittarius season rolling in here at the end of it really is going to help us shoot that arrow into the distance and head out there and enjoy the journey, okay? So Lilith is never an easy placement to work with. It is always going to trigger you. It is always going to bring anxiety. It's always going to have your ego get its back up, and it's going to be uncomfortable. But walking through this shadow, from my own perspective, from my own journey, from my own continuing journey, walking through this shadow is worth it. When we can transform these places in our Black Moon Lilith into power, you will turn into a completely different person. And the level of confidence and self-belief that you will have in yourself will be all of the comfort that you need. And in doing that, in transforming these things, in listening to your true soul guidance, you are then able to call in and attract people who are on your level. Because until we are sending out the energy of our authentic self, our true people cannot hear it, okay? So it is always worth going into the shadow, always. It is always worth the risk of walking out your front door and not having anybody in your circle know who you are, if that is what healing looks like to you. So never be afraid to do that. Never be afraid to go into the shadow. I will be putting up a workbook a little bit later, answering some of these questions. If anyone is interested, it'll be on my website. You can find the part 1 videos on YouTube. You can also find some links to being able to get your birth chart analysis. I can go through all of these things with you subjectively to do with your own details if you are into that, with some astrological counseling. I offer a number of other services, so check out my website. All right, together we can move forward and heal these wounds, and in doing that, in healing ourselves, we heal the world. Okay, so thank you for watching. If you are being a part of this healing our shadow journey, it is not an easy one. It does take us into some dark places, but you are not alone. We are all doing it, and it is for the benefit of ourselves and then for the collective, okay? So I advise you to check out the astro weather at least, see what the energy is feeling. I do mention the Lilith placements on that as well to sort of keep you up to date. And until next time, when I see your beautiful faces, stay weird.